Hi, I'm Teresa Chang.
Hi, I'm Felicia Grant Cummings.
Hi, I'm Kim Johnson with Moms Navigating Autism.
So welcome to the show. Tonight we have a special guest, Gabrielle Gizzo. She is the author of Sophie's Special Story, a wonderful story for moms who have kids with speech problems, disabilities, just so they can learn how to help their child with speech problems. And as I've told her, I have a special love for speech therapists.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a very exciting time. I have, been working on the book for a long time. So I'm just excited that it's going to be, out there in the real world for whether it's teachers, parents, and families. So thank you. It's very exciting. And growing up, I am the oldest in my family. So I have a younger sister and a younger brother. And I was always around their friends and babysitting a lot of children in my town. So I was always around a lot of children, and I just naturally grew up loving being around them, playing with them. And then as I got older, I had a lot of different jobs, whether it was a babysitter or a mother's helper or a teacher's assistant, and eventually, going to school for speech therapy. And I thought, this is such a great field. I get to help children communicate. What's more rewarding than that? So it always was just such a natural passion of mine. I really can't see myself doing anything else.
And Sophie, you have to tell us about Sophie.
Yes, so she is 5.5 years old now, and she is my toy poodle. And I actually got her when I was in graduate school, which is really when the idea of the book first came to mind. So for speech therapists, you do 2 years of graduate school. And during the second year, you have to do different clinical rotations. So essentially, it's different environments that you work with a supervisor. For example, you would go to a school or, an early intervention center or a hospital to do different rotations to earn hours to graduate. And when I was in this elementary school, it was great. I absolutely loved it. And what I learned was that, when you're working in an elementary school or really any school, there are so many different children with different needs on your caseload. Everything, from ADD, speech disorders, language disorders, autism, multiple disabilities. And a lot of times, yes, some children's IEPs will be written individually, but more often than not, they're written as a group, right? So then I was like, SLPs really need more resources that can be used in many different ways. And I thought a book is a great way to do that because you can target many different goals with books. And like I said, it was around the time when I got Sophie, and I thought everyone really loves dogs. Animals are great. And a lot of my children that I was working with at the time, and just children in general, they struggle with the S sound. It's a very hard sound for children to get. So I thought, well, my dog's name starts with an S, so I can write this story about Sophie and use different S adjectives to describe her, so that way the students could practice.
Wow. It's great. Now, did you draw the pictures in your book?
No, but that's a great question. So I am not artistically talented. I was very fortunate that after I had written my manuscript and I was researching different publication companies, I came across one, and they did everything essentially. So they did, the editing and the pictures, they put together the pages and the printing and the distribution. So I was very fortunate. It was, a one-stop shop. But what I did was I have tons of pictures of Sophie. So I sent them to the company, and then the illustrators did such a great job because it looks so real. They just copied, right? They just copied the images that I sent them.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So tell us about the story.
So the story starts off with basically describing me kind of when I was younger. So I was shy and quiet, and growing up, I always wanted a dog. And then the storyline continues about how I was researching and how it couldn't be just any dog. It had to be a really special dog. And then it goes into me getting Sophie. And then on each page, there's a different picture of Sophie, which of course is just like the real life images. And then it describes how, special she is, how we like to go on walks, the different activities we like to do together. And then what I like at the end is there's all the different S adjectives. So, she's special, she's sleepy, she's snuggly, which of course is good for the children or the students to practice. And then after that page at the end, I put there's a verbal and visual model. So there's a mouth, and then there's a description for at-home practice or for speech therapists to practice how to produce the S sound. So a lot of times I will get parents that will ask, what can I do at home to practice, whatever goal or skill I'm working on with this student. So in this book at the end, there is already that picture of the mouth and then 3 steps on how to practice making an S sound.
Oh, wow. See, that's good because it gives you a visual.
Right. And
Right.
I like to pair multiple models together, even when I'm working day to day with my students. I don't only give them a visual support. I put the visual with the verbal, because that's how children learn, through that multimodal system.
Yes. Mine was like that,
Yes. Yeah.
And he did have issues with some pronunciations. Actually, as I think I've said on the show before, he wasn't talking when he was 2.
Sometimes, and I've seen this with my students, and I'll hear it from parents too. It's my child wasn't talking at 1 to 2 years old, but now they're 3 and they just had like this language burst and they start talking in full sentences sometimes. But children really are, when they're younger, their minds are like sponges. So
Yes.
whether they hear something through a video or a book, or just parents or their teachers talking, they're going to absorb that. And I always tell parents, the more exposure to language when they're younger, the better.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I think it's wonderful because, you're giving parents kind of like a small textbook in a book, and it's something that they could do with the kids. Are you going to write any more?
I would love to. I have other ideas that I'm like starting to brainstorm in my head, but I would definitely love to either do more of a series of Sophie, or branch out, maybe just create another character. But I think it's such a great resource because it can be used by speech therapists in the sessions. It can be used by teachers if they just want to keep the book in their classroom library. It could be used, like you said, like by parents for at-home practice. And they can target, so many different things, not just the S sounds. They can target answering WH questions or expanding their sentences from 2 to 3 word phrases. They can target recalling details and sequencing. So that's why I like books in general for my students, because you can just use it for so many things.
You sit in an IEP meeting and they put in social skills, and it's supposed to be done with the speech therapist, and while they get integration with the social worker, but they put it in my speech therapist's curriculum, or and they're like, okay, so sit down in front of this video and watch this video. And some of them are good, some of them are bad. But like with my child, he has a photographic memory, so he would memorize everything in it. And then it's like, you're going to make me watch this again?
What? Right. And I've been very fortunate. I have worked with, preschoolers all the way up to middle school. So I have really seen, such a wide range. And as far as the social skills go, I always, when I'm in the IEP meetings, and I always tell parents and, the other team collaborators to make it as practical as possible, especially as they're getting older. You know, my middle school students last year, it was great because the teacher, she was phenomenal. She was doing a lot of practical experience with them. And, you know, as they're getting older, that's what they need, more of that like hands-on, like it's great if they can sit there and, you know, like watch a video maybe one time early on in the year to kind of learn like the basic skills, but then definitely expand on that and give them more like real life experiences.
Right. And that's exactly what they need, because the videos, while they're watching the videos, it's no different than sitting at home and watching TV. You know?
Right.
You know, but they need to be able to take what they learned and put it into everyday practice.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
And what I loved, actually, this was when I was in graduate school, is sometimes I know universities, they have like social skills groups or pragmatic groups. And I think that's great because not only are the children learning the skills, but then they get to interact with each other and they can practice those skills.
Right. And see, that's exactly what needs to happen. It doesn't work if they just show them a video.
Right.
It's like as soon as they turn off the TV, they learned it, but they don't use it.
And I know sometimes, again, of course, depending on how the IEPs are written, they'll have the social worker collaborate with the speech therapist and do like a social skills group, which I think is great. And I love even collaborating with whether it's OT, PT, you know, whoever, because I think, again, just that multidisciplinary team approach, if that's what's, you know, going to help the student the best, then that's what, you know, should be done.
Right. And I think that's wonderful. Yeah, if you get one up, because then the teacher has it in the classroom, they can practice with the kids. If you have a severely autistic child, I don't think whether it'll help them, although they might like the story.
They definitely, they might like this story. And I feel like just in my experience, you know, working with children on the spectrum in general, and you know, I'm sure like their skills are such a wide range. But so obviously it would depend on, you know, how verbal they are they nonverbal, how's their joint attention, are they interested in the story? And it could definitely help even with like turn taking skills, like if a parent or teacher read one page and the child, you know, was pointing to a picture on the next page, or if they had reading skills, you know, read the next page, or, you know, it could expand their vocabulary because you could describe Sophie, you know, with the pictures, again, depending on, of course, you know, what their needs are and what their goals are, but it could be of help. Yeah.
Right. Or if they see a dog that looks like Sophie, they'd recognize it, which is, you know, A+. Yeah.
Right. Because then you could connect it to real life experiences.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's wonderful. I really do hope you write some more books.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you want to tell us about where you went to school?
Yes. So I had a great educational experience. Very, very thankful. I went to Loyola University, Maryland for my undergraduate, and that gave me a great foundation. It further just, you know, reassured me that this is the field that I'm supposed to be in. And then I went to Adelphi University out in Long Island for my master's. And that was amazing too. It was tough graduating during COVID, but that of course wasn't, you know, their fault. But Adelphi, that was great. I learned a lot. The university shut down March 2020. So we were like just 3 months shy of like making it. But honestly, I mean, I guess the blessing in disguise would be that in those last 3 months, we got a lot of, you know, practice doing remote therapy and teletherapy, which now, you know, is out there in the real world. So it was good.
It has become the norm. You know, there's a lot of places.
How is that the remote therapy with speech and stuff for somebody that's not as verbal? Like say for my son is nonverbal. So to be hands-on, because I know my son struggled with that. He had trouble with the virtual learning. I was like the other therapist.
Right. So, and honestly, so I do remote speech therapy now. So I work for a school district pre-K to 5th graders I have on my caseload. And what I tell people is I feel so the preschoolers, obviously they struggle more just because of their attention skills, and they're getting distracted, they can't sit still for long. The older kids, the third, fourth, and fifth graders, they're more used to technology, so it's easier to sustain their attention and then work on their speech goals. I honestly feel though that if a child had severe needs, like you were saying, your son, it would be more challenging to target virtually. I would rather, if I had the choice, or if the speech therapist had the choice, I would definitely rather work in person and have a hands-on approach, because I personally feel that children, the more needs they have, they benefit from more of tactile, hands-on approach, whether that's using, verbal and visual cues, but also maybe a low tech or maybe a high tech device. And I think just that in person is probably what's best. Yeah.
There was a teacher in Mexico. She was a special ed teacher. She had a pickup truck, and she knew all her special ed kids couldn't learn, via remote. So she turned her pickup truck into a classroom, and she would drive to all their houses every day and teach them for a couple of hours, and then head back home. She drove like 200 miles a day.
Oh my goodness, that is so sweet.
And she did, because she put the desk and the two chairs on top of her. It was outdoors.
Right.
They were far enough away from each other, but she was able to teach them that way.
Right. No, that's amazing. That's like such a great story to hear. But I mean, there are pros to, remote therapy, of course, but I think there's, unfortunately, especially when it comes to communication, there's just certain like social skills that it's hard to teach remotely, especially for a student that's on the spectrum. They need that in-person interaction and feedback.
Right. I think a lot of the kids on the spectrum, I don't know about other disabilities, but on the spectrum, I think a lot of them, they regressed during COVID. I know mine did. Mine regressed. He did not like online anything, even that now he gets some friends, hey, do you want to play something with me? Where if this was prior to COVID, kids used to play video games online together all the time. Now he's like, no, I'd rather not.
Right.
He wants that interaction.
And even my students that aren't on the spectrum, maybe they just have like a speech goal or just like a language goal where I'm teaching them, syntax or, some grammar skills like using pronouns and verbs. One of the biggest struggles I find with remote learning is all of the concepts are a lot more abstract because it is remote, versus when you're doing in-person speech therapy, it's easier because it's just concrete. You can be hands-on, and I feel like the students then absorb, whatever it is you're working on much better.
I had speech therapy when I was in first grade.
Oh, really?
First grade. Yeah. See, I was born in Ecuador.
Okay.
So my mother was a school teacher in Ecuador, and she taught us Spanish. So when we came here, I came here when I was a year and 10 months old when I arrived here. And my father had gone to the U.S. Embassy, asked them for permission to move here, and they granted it. And the thing about it is back then, they found him a job. By the time he got here, we had a place to live. He had a job. But I used to pronounce my THs as Fs.
Okay, that's common. Yep.
So I used to have like a whole bunch of like speech things that I had. So when I got into school, they're like, you need speech therapy. So I used to get speech therapy, like twice a week, I think, or once or twice a week, to get rid of those speech impediments that I had.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. So a lot of my students this year on my caseload, they either come from, whether it's bilingual homes or multilingual homes, and the TH is common, but of course there's also other sounds that they have to work on as well. And I think now versus, I don't obviously know how it was, whether it was 20 or 30 years ago, but now in the world of speech therapy, there is such an understanding and awareness when it comes to other languages and other cultures and how that influences their communication, which I think is so important. We have to take a few classes in graduate school about cultural considerations, and there's ethics courses that we do to maintain our licensing. And then, of course, as you're working with the students, is it, really a language disorder? Is it a language delay? Is it just a cultural factor? And now students can be tested, in the schools in their native language as well as English, which is really nice to see like how that has changed.
I benefited from speech therapy. My son benefited from speech therapy. If they don't have communication, it does tend to get behavioral. It does tend to get very frustrating.
Of course. And when I'm in these IEP meetings, it totally makes sense. And I often validate, the parents' concerns. They're like, well, my son or my daughter, they're struggling. And then I see them getting, behavioral or physical. And I'm like, that makes sense. I mean, imagine if you were trying to, get out your thoughts and no one around you could understand you. Like, how would you feel? Especially if a child is 2 or 3 years old, or even if they're, in elementary or, middle school. If you can't get across your point of view, of course, that's going to be upsetting. But I always tell parents, it makes sense, and that's why the more you can do when they're younger and the more resources you give them when they're younger, that will help them as they continue to grow, because the language demands and the academic demands only increase as they get older.
Right. And it gets more complex.
Of course, yes.
It gets more complex, and it becomes like they have to try to figure it out. And then you add in, the lack of social skills, and it becomes even more complex, and even the teaching, it starts to become more abstract. Some teachers start to, like, when they get into middle school, they start to teach abstract learning, and the kids are like, on the spectrum, they're like,
I know. It's so interesting you say that, because I'm 28, so it's not like I was in school not too long ago, but nowadays they do everything different, right? They have like the new math, the new science. I'm like, if I was to sit in their math class, like, it's so abstract. Like I couldn't do it.
Right, exactly.
It's hard. It's very hard, because especially, like I said, I've worked with, preschool all the way up to middle school, and it's especially hard for the younger ones, like the preschoolers, because that's when the parents are really just first entering the school system and, hearing all these new terms, IEP meetings, and it can be overwhelming because they are, trying to advocate for their child and figure out what would work best for them, and, explain any concerns that they're having. But it can definitely be hard. And then as they get older, then you have new concerns coming out, like how are they going to interact with friend groups, and what's going to happen when they go to a middle school. It's a whole new big building. How are they going to figure out opening the locker and then getting to, the other class that's down the hall, So I'm not a parent, but I can understand. Yeah. This is the cover, Sophie's special story. So that's me with Sophie. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Gabriella. Growing up, Gabriella was a little bit quiet and shy when it came to making friends. Okay. Sophie was full of life, and she provided Gabriella with the unconditional love and friendship she wanted. Sophie would wake up Gabriella every morning with kisses. And then this is the page with that's what I was talking about before, with the verbal and visual. So the special features. So this is the classic picture that we use for S sounds. And then it says, align your teeth with a gentle closure and a smile. Keep your tongue in your mouth and let it relax on the floor of your mouth. So typically we tell children, keep the snake in the cage. A lot of children, when they're trying to say any S, their tongue comes out. So it comes forward, but you want to keep it in your mouth. And then you would practice producing the S, like in the word Sophie. And then there's extra practice and tips for when producing an S cluster, like smart or sleepy or any of the other adjectives.
I think it's wonderful that you wrote this book, that you can help. I think you should, honestly, my opinion, I think you should make it a series. through the different,
Letters.
letters or combination of letters, combination of words,
Yeah.
and you could expand it onto social skills and different things, but
Definitely. Yes.
and you could
Where do
probably
you sell the book? Where do you sell the book now? Where could somebody get the book?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble on their website. So right now it's predominantly sold online because until like Barnes & Noble, for example, they have to see how it does online and then they decide what books to keep like the hard copy in the store. So that's why I've been telling everyone to just buy it online for now. Hopefully, as it does well and things progress over the next few months, then it'll be kept more in stores. But right now it's just predominantly on those two platforms. And my publishing company is also working on getting an ebook out there. They're still like uploading all of the files, but there will be an ebook available as well.
you can also go into Barnes and Noble and ask them to have the book brought to the store and then buy it from the store.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. And I'm working too with Barnes and Noble, hopefully within the next maybe month or so, about doing like a reading there. And then when I do the reading there, that's when I think they want to like bring the books in so it's displayed on the table and so then the parents could see it and buy it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
At Barnes and Noble visit on our website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they put it out to all the parents that follow us. They'll know that, you're having a reading somewhere with that book and stuff. So
It was great having you on the show.
Thank you. I loved it. Thank you so much.
We want to thank Gabriella Gizzo for joining us tonight and reading us her wonderful book. Go out and buy the book. It's called Sophie's Special Story. We also want to thank Autism for providing us with this platform. And we want to remind everybody that we are mothers. We're not professionals. We're sharing our experiences so that we can help you with your autism child.
don't forget to watch us on social media. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe.